Were You Ever a Child? By Floyd Dell. Chapter 17. The Artist as a Child. Without any further delay, the artist shall now address you. Please take the platform, sir. My friends, we are gathered here today to consider how to implement in the youthful and innocent minds which are entrusted to our care the beneficent and holy influences of that transcendent miracle which we know as art. Sacred and mysterious subject that it is, we approach it with bated. Wait, there is some mistake here, I am sure. Just a moment. We approach with bated breath these austere and sacred. Stop, I say. Austere and sacred regions. Usher, will you please throw this fellow out? He is not the man we were listening to this morning. He is a rank impostor who has disguised himself as an artist in order to befuddle our deliberations with mystagogical cant. If you will pull off that false beard, I think you will find that he is a well-known Chautauqua lecturer. Aha, I thought so. Shame on you. And now get out of here as quickly as you can. Ah, there comes the real artist. Late as usual. What have you to say for yourself? I'm sorry, I got to thinking of something else, and nearly forgot to come back here, which brings me at once to the heart of what I want to say. Artists, as I've said, are children, and children that they are, they forget the errands upon which the world sends them. They forget because these errands are not part of their own life. You reproach us with being careless and irresponsible, but if you will study the child at play or the artist at work, you will discover that he is not careless or irresponsible in regard to his own concerns. But this deep divorce between the concerns of the artist and the child and the concerns of the world is the tragic problem for which we now seek a solution. The world has been unable to solve it. It has only made the breach deeper. For the world does not know that its work can be play, that adult life can be a game like the games of children, only with more desperate and magnificent issues. It does not reflect that we gather sticks in the wood with infinite happy patience and labor to build our bonfires because those bonfires are our own dream creatively realized. And they cannot think of any better way to get us to bring in the wood for the kitchen stove than to say, Johnny, I've told you 3 times to bring in that wood, and if you can't mind, I'll have your father interview you in the woodshed. In brief, it presents our participation in adult life as meaningless toil performed at the bidding of another under coercion, and the whole of adult life gradually takes on the same aspect. We are to do the bidding of another in office or factory because otherwise we will starve. So the child artist unwillingly becomes a slave. But there are some children who rebel against slavery. They prefer to keep their dreams. They are regarded with disapproval and anxiety by their families who tell them that they must grow up. But they do not want to grow up into slavery. They want to remain free. They want to make their dreams come true. But who will pay for your dreams? The world asks. And it is not pleasant to face the possibility of starving to death. And so they comfort themselves with the illusion of fame and wealth. Sometimes their families are cajoled into investing in this rather doubtful speculative enterprise, and the child artist becomes an artist child supported through life by his parents and playing busily at his art. Sometimes the speculation turns out well financially, the illusion of success becomes a reality. But this, however gratifying to the artist as a justification of his career, is not his own reason for being an artist. The successful artist has a childlike pleasure in the awe of really grown-up people at the material proofs of his importance. And if he has given hostages to fortune, if he must support a family of his own, he may ploddingly reproduce the happy accidents of his creative effort which gained him these rewards. But he feels that in so doing he has ceased to be a free man and become a slave. And all too often, as we know from the shocked comment of the world, he renounces these rewards, becomes a child at play again, and lets his wife and children get along as best they may. He yearns perhaps for fame as a sort of public consent to his going on being a child, but whether he starves in the garret or bows from his limousine to admiring crowds, what he really wants of the world is just permission to play. He is not interested in the affairs of the world. There are exceptions, of course. There are poets and musicians and painters who take an interest in the destinies of mankind, but this is regarded by their fellow artists as a kind of heresy or disloyalty, much as school children or college boys regard the behavior of one who really takes his schoolwork seriously. The public also is accustomed to regard the artist as a child. They laugh at his ideas about practical affairs, though often enough they adopt his ideas in dead earnest later. Shelley, for instance, proposed to conduct campaigns of education by dropping leaflets from balloons. A quaint idea, characteristic of his visionary and impractical mind, said his biographers. And then, having laughed at the idea, the world, in its great war, proceeds to adopt that idea and carry it out on a tremendous scale. When the child refuses to be a slave, he is thenceforth excluded by common consent from the affairs of the grown-up world. And as the breach widens between the artist and the world, as the world becomes more and more committed to slavery, the artist is more consciously and willfully a child. He is forbidden by the growing public opinion of his group to write or sing about human destinies. The artist must not be a propagandist, it is declared indignantly. And finally, it comes to such a pass that it is not artistic good form for the artist to tell stories which the public can understand. The painter is prohibited from making images which the common man is able to recognize. The musician scorns to compose tunes which anybody could dance to or whistle. And all this is simply the child's defiance to the world. His games are his own, and the grown-ups can keep their hands off. If adult life is slavery, which it is, he will be damned before he will have anything to do with it. And he is damned to a childishness which contains only the stubborn willfulness of the child's playing, but has forgotten its motive. That motive is different from his. He has changed from the child who played at being a man to a man who plays at being a child. The child's dreams were large, and his are small. The child took all life for his province, was by turns a warrior, a blacksmith, a circus rider, a husband, a storekeeper, a fireman, a savage, an undertaker. The child artist wanted to play at everything. The artist child has renounced these magnificent ambitions. The world may conscript him to fight in its wars, but he refuses to bother his head as to what they are about. If he finds that he has to walk uptown because there is a streetcar strike, he is mildly annoyed, but I am describing an extreme but not infrequent type. He declines to interest himself in the labor movement. He escapes from the responsibilities of a serious love affair on the ground that an artist should never marry. He pays his grocery bills or leaves them unpaid, but the cooperative movement bores him, and so on. He is content to live in that little corner of life in which he can play undisturbed by worldly interests. This type, I have said, is not infrequent. Its perfect exemplars, the artists who were so completely children that they did not even know of the existence of the outside world, are revered as the saints of art and often as its martyrs, which in truth they were. And they are admired by thousands of young artists who only aspired to such perfection while shamefacedly admitting that they themselves are tainted with ordinary human interests. This is what the world has done to us. It has made us choose between being children in a tiny sphere all our lives, or going into the larger world of reality as slaves. And I think we have made the right choice, for we have kept alive in our childish folly the flame of a sacred revolt against slavery. We have succeeded in making the world envious of our freedom. We have shown it the only way to be happy. But the artist cannot get along without the world. His art springs from the commonest impulses of the human race, and those impulses are utilitarian at root. The savage who scratched the aurochs on the wall of his cave was hungry for meat and desirous of luck in the hunting tomorrow. The primitive Greeks who danced their seasonal dances from which sprang the glory of dramatic art wanted the crops to grow, and that which we call great art everywhere is great only because it springs from a communal hunger and fulfills a communal wish. When art becomes divorced from the aspirations of the common man, all its technical perfection will not keep it alive. It revolts against its own technical perfection and goes off into quaint and austere quests for new truths upon which to nourish itself. And only when it discovers the common man and fulfills his unfulfilled desires does it flourish again. Art must concern itself with the world or perish. Nor can the world get along without the artist. Slavery cannot keep it going. It needs the free impulses of the creative spirit. It needs the artist, not as a being to scorn and worship by turns, but as the worker-director of its activities. It needs the artist as blacksmith, husband and storekeeper, as teacher, priest, and statesman. Only so can it endure and fulfill its destinies. But if the artist is to be all these things, if he is to enter into the activities of the real world instead of running away from them, he must grow up. And that is the task of education, to make a man of him without killing the artist. We must begin, then, before the artist in him is killed. We must begin with the child. So far as I can see, the school as it exists at present is utterly and hopelessly inadequate to the task. It requires a special mechanism which happily exists in the outside world and need only be incorporated into the educational system in order to provide a medium of transition between the dream creations of childhood and the realistic creativity of adult life. This mechanism is the theater.